Let's get started. So one note, you all have probably gathered little tidbits of what's going on here. There are 6 different groups in the room, and you all are residents of different professions on a fictional planet called the Blue Planet. It's very, very like Earth in all kinds of ways. Same climatic system, same physics, same economy, same population, just we've swapped out names, so any likeness that you see is just sort of happenstance. But in the room we have, over here, we have Land and Agriculture and Forestry Alliance.
Woo!
Lab 4 Alliance.
Yeah.
Hello. In the back here, we have Fossil Fuel Multinational Incorporated. Here in the front, you all are the Low Carbon Energy Company. Thank you all for showing up today. Here in the middle, at the circle of chairs, we have the Justice Hawks. And a little introduction to who you all are. So back in the back, the fossil fuel multinational, they're representing 75% of the world's emissions, right there. Land and Agriculture and Forestry, you all are about 20% of the world's emissions. So we have convened you all, and you'll hear a little bit about why you're all sitting in the room, because of your big roles. Then in the back here, what are you all? You are Pandasia. So this is a country on the Blue Planet. It represents about 20% of the world's population. They're a rapidly emerging, developing economy, very good in engineering, and also have a lot of the world's manufacturing. Here at the front, we have the Cream Estates. They are also one of a big superpower here on the Blue Planet, and a big player here when it comes to making a lot of decisions. But again, why you all are all in the room together will be revealed soon, but I just wanted to let you know who you are, and give you a minute, if you haven't already, introduce yourselves to your group, as well as read over your briefing statement. And you'll note there's some other papers there on the table. You have a guide to the control panel. We are going to be using this tool, En-ROADS, which will be explained more later, and many of those papers will become apparent. But I'll give you all a few minutes, and then I'll be back for more.
And Kathy. Okay.
So happy to take a chair, introduce yourself. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, really. Yeah, go to
You're all, as long as it's not in the bathroom.
I'm so glad I'm in this group.
Oh. That would be a cool photo. I like this cheeses. And one, I don't know how games work.
be cool.
Just looking over there. Figuring it all
Cause
out.
it's the,
Yeah, tell her hello from me. We work together all day.
You're my face, she's my ad, and together we might change the world. Yes.
She's all excited. So the thing we're doing on the 31st, I'm going to do this on the 31st as part of the faith track of the class. And I've talked to her about it, but I haven't talked to her in a long time about it. Like I would making good contact.
Is she gonna be back?
She's gone.
But she may be back.
I mean, I haven't.
Yeah.
Got,
So, I mean, that being on 11 pages,
on my
you
own.
kind of really get the philosophy
We're
of
totally
involved in anything like that? No.
No, not now.
Immortal planet, right?
So I did that one time.
and well, we should.
And no, I've never
This is
done
your first
it.
time to do something similar.
He had me join a son that works for the
So you
ZP
have.
Attention everyone. Thank you all for coming to this very urgent meeting. I'm going to turn it over without much more introductory remarks to the Secretary General. Thank you.
Thank you for attending this emergency climate summit. As you all know, it has been a horrible week. Finally, what they've been predicting, a Category 5 hurricane, as you know, 4 days ago, hit Oceania. The population is now down 80%. There are 4 million internally displaced people in your country, as you know. I spoke to the mayor. They're heartbroken. Beyond just the huge loss in numbers, I spoke to one of the representatives and the executive from FFM, and I understand that you have lost several family members. The numbers are more than we can handle of what has actually happened with this hurricane. We've just gotten over 3 weeks ago the hurricane, the super typhoon, bigger than super typhoon Haiyan that hit the Philippines. This one was worse. The representative who called me, who had lost, actually it was their niece and their nephew in that hurricane in Oceania, told me as well about how the drought has been affecting many of the coal-fired power plant activities and all of the hydropower in the Southwest. So they are economically hurting. We all as well know that grain harvests are down 28%, and just global migration we noticed last year was up 40%. Finally, we've had the moment, and I just want to thank you for the call. I've been asking you all to join this kind of meeting for a very long time. And finally, we're here with an emergency climate summit. I'm reminded of December 7th, 1941, the day that will live where? In infamy. You don't know about 4 days later, December 11th, because that was the day when they actually had achieved a plan in the United States to deal with entering this global effort. On December 8th, Franklin Delano Roosevelt called the chairman of General Motors and said, "You will come to Washington, D.C. right now." Chairman came, said, "We will curtail our production of civilian passenger vehicles." He said, Roosevelt, "No, you will cease all production of all civilian vehicles, and you will only dedicate yourself to getting rid of the tyranny of what's happening in Europe." Citizens responded as well. We've heard about the victory gardens. We've heard about recycling metal. We've reduced meat consumption. People can pull together quickly. This is our Pearl Harbor moment here on our planet. So I've invited 6 groups of people who in an hour can craft a plan for finally addressing this challenge. You have 1 hour to come up with a plan that is going to work. We need 2 biggest nations on Earth, on blue planet. We need the leaders of 7 billion people. We need all of you together to work on this. I'm going to turn it over to the chairwoman of climate for the United Nations. And she's going to help set you up with your roles and move forward. But I want you to understand, this is an emergency climate summit. I need you to work very hard. No fooling around. Get it done. 60 minutes.
Thank you, Secretary General. Your presence here is very much appreciated, and my condolences as well. I didn't say this at the beginning, but to those who have lost family members recently and are dealing with the impacts in all different kinds of ways. I know this is a tough time, and you all know too that we have a lot has been anticipated that we would see these kinds of impacts for a while. Many of you all have been doing work on this. We're seeing some progress in a number of different industries and across these different nations in terms of what you're going to do to take action on climate. What we're looking at here is a model developed by the good folks over at Climate Interactive and MIT Sloan School of Management. This model uses the best available science and synthesizes it. It's got over 32,000 equations running behind the scenes. They run in less than a second. So we're going to be using this to help us get an understanding of what it's going to take to address this challenge and to take action. And at the heart of this, as you all know, these impacts that we're seeing, they stem from the increased levels of greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere. We're seeing unprecedented levels of carbon dioxide emissions, and this comes from sources like coal, oil, and gas burning, as well as things like deforestation. So on this control panel that you see here today, you can take action, and you'll see in front of you, you have guides to the control panel. That's kind of your map to what you're seeing up here. Those two things are parallel. But on the left here, you see a graph of the sources of energy. So each line there represents a different source of energy. Coal, that darkest line at the top, oil in red, gas in blue, renewable energy in green, bioenergy in pink, nuclear down there at the bottom, and then some new technology which doesn't exist yet, but we could perhaps plan that it arrives that could take off as well. On the right is our current trajectory in terms of temperature change. So here we are in 2019, and we're at about 1 degree of warming, and we're already seeing these devastating impacts. What will the world be if we let it get to 4.2 degrees? Let's not go there. So again, the graph on the right goes from the year 2000 out to 2100. That big temperature number is the estimated global average temperature change by the year 2100. And we want to change that from 4.2 to well below 2 degrees and aim for 1.5 degrees as the global agreement states. So what I want you all to do is come up with, and before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to the Secretary General. Do you have anything else to add about this tool that we're looking at here?
No, let's get to work.
Okay. So the way this is going to work is you all, we're going to go around in rounds. Each group, when it comes to your turn, you will have the option of presenting one policy that you want to change up here to lower temperature, or if a policy has been proposed that you do not like, you can also take off a policy and remove it. So we're going to go around and around. I guess first off, I'll give you a couple minutes to just circle up as a group and first pick a spokesperson from your team and pick out a couple levers that are a priority area for your group to see in this global climate plan and that you all think you can realize. Then as we go around, I'll give you a chance to talk amongst each other again, and you can really reorient your strategy as we see what works and what doesn't in this tool. But again, pick one spokesperson to start out with. They will have 1 minute to give a brief intervention as to what their policy is and why. So you all are representing your groups, you have stakeholders back home, you have citizens back home. you are responsible to them as well. This is an emergency summit. We do ask you to act, in the best interest of our planet, but we also understand you are who you are. So
I think showing one demonstration of what we mean by testing in the model might make some sense. For example, one of you may suggest to increase transport, the energy efficiency of transport. That would be a bit more Priuses and fewer SUVs over the next 50 years around the whole world. And so what we would do is we would say, let's imagine an increase in that. And you notice, you can see that things change. I could watch the brown line on the top left. If you were to increase energy efficiency, we would need less coal. Temperature goes from 4.2 to 4.1. The point is, you make a suggestion, and then it makes some impact. And then the next group will make another suggestion. It will have an impact. Or you can undo a group suggestion if you don't like it.
Yes. Are we limited on which level we suggest any of them?
you can suggest any of them, yeah. But for the group here, I think we would all appreciate it if you suggest something well outside of your specialty area. You explain how your plan is to make that happen. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to circle back up, pick a person, and pick a few different levers that you're ready to try, and then we'll get on with the show.
Hey, Kathy, what was the thing that she said that you wrote down back in the space?
4 million displaced, grain production 28% down.
So we want to decrease grain production is already 20% down.
28% down.
Hurricanes.
Yeah. So, are you gonna be our folks right now?
Okay.
Is that a fair deal? Yeah. So instead of prioritizing oh, good. You're welcome. Yeah. Glad I nominated. You're welcome.
I've been geeking out on biochar recently.
How do you want to do it? Do you want to like go around or real quick?
So we're mostly focusing over here with our suggestions to the experts, right?
So on the bottom also, it kind of gives you a guide. Your interests include. You want to, so up there on the right, on the screen, sort of lower deforestation. We move that to the left, see what happens, go down, move afforestation up a little bit, and then reductions, move methane and other. But it says here, there's only so much you can do before food prices go up, so I'm not sure like how much they'll let us lower that one.
Okay, so one way to lower methane and CO2 emissions is to take the plant-based diet, and another way is to take the Russian stuff that would otherwise be emitting as it just lies in landfills. And instead, make biochar out of it, in which case you capture 50% of the carbon, put it in the ground, which will then, once you inoculate it with good cultures and microbes and vastly increase the productivity. And hold the soil captures 50% of the carbon would otherwise, if it was just burned, without a low oxygen environment, it would just be released as CO2. Or if it was just left rotting in a landfill or on the ground, crop waste and so on, would be converted into CO2. And the second thing is we want to increase agricultural productivity. So the way biochar does that is that by sequestering carbon in the soil, carbon has a lot of surface area, it's huge. And so Terra Preta in South America, for example, is still holding water. It holds water in all drought situations, which we have, and also holds nutrients. nutrients and slow releases the nutrients, beneficial bacteria and fungi can be inoculated into it, and it's just can increase plant growth by factors of 2 or 3 times as much.
I miss how we get biochar.
The way you get biochar is you take the waste of wood, which could be brush or tree limbs or agricultural crop waste, which often is either just burned, or it's just left to rot or put in landfill, chips, tree chips. And instead, we burn it in the absence of oxygen, biochar. Half of the carbon that was in the original thing you're still burning it, but you can burn it in ways where you're getting good use out of it. So you can either burn it in a way that you're generating electricity, you can burn it in a way to generate CHP, combined heat power, or you can burn it directly to cook. All these technologies are available.
What it requires, if you're saying to cook with, or are you saying for like domestic, like at home, regular, individuals, would it require a special oven?
It can be used small scale or large scale.
So would this require new technology for people to use it then? You can't
Technology is
well, it's there, but do they need to go to Best Buy and buy it, or do they need to build it themselves?
right. So you can build these things out of 55 gallon drums, but more efficient ones, probably there's some economies of scale.
Are we building plants, like to factories, to crop processes, biochar?
No, because you don't want to have to ship the raw materials long distances. So
Good idea.
that's one of them. And the dual benefit is it sequesters carbon and it helps with food.
Just one minor thing that immediately comes to me is I would make deforestation a higher priority than afforestation, just because it says as trees grow, they draw carbon out of the air, which means it's just the deforestation would be more important because they're already grown.
Keeping standing forest for number
It
one.
would at least a higher priority than afforestation, I would say.
But afforestation is you plant a small tree so it's growing, but it's
Afforestation is planting trees where probably weren't there before, or they weren't.
Okay, folks. Okay, 1 minute warning.
I would say shift towards plant.
You're thinking of what will be your first proposal. You're also thinking, what do you want not to see?
So kind of, are you
1 minute, but this will be the first round. Think of the things you'd like to change.
to have land or subsidies dedicated to growing cows or maybe even the food that we grow for cows or where you think of those?
Yeah, I think that all we have to do is just say methane and others. At this point, just like we won't get everyone to come and just share. Let them.
Yeah.
So it's like that one, and the other one is just recognizing that oil and gas, as those prices go up, it's going to impact us. So I would say we should get rid of coal first from our demographic and increase renewables, but then not mess around too much with oil and gas at this point.
Let's say that we're not necessarily detailed.
I'm going to write that down. Okay.
So I think we've talked about sort of taxing all these
All right, attention everyone. Okay, cool. We are ready to jump in. Thank you all.
carbon credits.
Can I have everyone's attention, please?
Could the delegates please stop talking? Please. Right here.
All
Here we
right,
go.
great.
Here we
Thank
go.
you.
Let's get this done.
Okay, so we're going to start with the cream estates over here. Could you all please send forward your spokesperson and propose your first intervention?
The delegate from Akrima has 60 seconds. Go.
Given the gravity of the situation, we're prepared to invest heavily in new technology. We also recognize that methane, as among the greenhouse gases, one of the...
Excuse me, actually, maybe we weren't clear. You get to make one suggestion.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We
One
want to
suggestion,
increase
new technology.
new
Thank you
technology.
very much.
Okay.
Here we go. Go ahead.
All right, so the Secretary General is going to add in new technology.
First, before I do it, what do you think it's going to do? Talk to the people for 15 seconds about what temperature will reduce if we have a zero carbon technology such as thorium fission or fusion introduced in 2020, just cheaper than coal. It will diffuse around the world. It takes time to commercialize. Will temperature come down? How far?
So raise your hand if you think we'll get all the way to our goal of getting well below 2 degrees with this new technology. Okay, no one is raising their hand. Do you think that we'll get at least down to 3 degrees? No. Okay. Well, you all propose new technology. Let's see what it'll do.
Watch at the top left, there's an orange line. That represents how much energy we're getting from this new technology. Which line do you see moving the most besides the orange line?
Lowering coal.
It succeeds at keeping coal in the ground. It's being successful. Look over on the right, temperature goes from 4.2 to 4.0, a significant reduction of 0.2 degrees, but no silver bullet. So there we are. You have now succeeded in introducing new technology, and you're down to 4.0 degrees. Let's move on to the next.
All right, next, I'm going to turn it over to Pandasia. Come on up.
One note, it takes a long time for this to grow. Notice it doesn't pick up till 2050. And we're burning coal, oil, and gas until 2050 when it really takes off. We can also look in deeper and see, pardon me, delegate, I'm going to have to say one more thing. Imagine if it's cheaper than coal and it spreads around the world, it's inexpensive energy. What happens to the global cost of energy? On average, it goes down. If energy gets cheaper, what happens to demand for energy globally? Now think, exactly. So we can look over here and watch energy consumption. Final energy consumption is actually, the blue line is what the world you just created. The black line is the old world. So imagine a world, more energy use, but slightly lower carbon. On net, it reduces temperature 0.2 degrees, which is a help, but does not get us as far as we need to go. Now we're going to hear the delegate from Pandasia to talk about their next proposal.
Our proposal is to subsidize renewables.
Fantastic.
Subsidized renewable energy. Great. Thank you, Pandasia. Pandasia, do you have anything to add about why you like this policy?
Not at this moment.
All right. Thank you, Pandasia. As you all know, Pandasia is known for their engineering. So I guess they're a country of few words, but they're going to deliver on their insights. So they asked for a proposal to subsidize renewable energy. So with that, in addition to the new technology that the Krim Estates offered, let's see where that gets us.
Imagine a world that already has abundant zero carbon energy. This is a form of nuclear because of the proposal you just made. Now we're adding on top of it subsidies to wind and solar. So watch the orange line and watch the green line. Actually, just to see what already happened with renewables, watch the green line from the last proposal. You see the green line of renewables right here? When we introduce zero carbon thorium fission, it goes down, so it's killing wind and solar. So imagine a world now we're subsidizing renewables. We have a global battle. What will be the long-term energy source on Earth? We're subsidizing it, and if we subsidize it a lot, we could imagine it beating out zero carbon thorium fission. But our math is showing that it does not beat it out, and it increases. So the green line goes up, and temperature goes down only 0.1 degree. We have competing sources. They're not really adding to each other because we're still burning a lot of coal, oil, and gas.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's continue onward. I'm going to turn it over to our low carbon energy company. What do you all propose we should do?
We recognize that the current status of coal and oil and gas, and which is currently fairly affordable in comparison to renewable energy that we all know we need to transition to, that's clean and is not going to be burning carbon. So we believe the first major step we want to do to be able to address this crisis is to enact a carbon price on oil and gas, and in order to incentivize the use of renewables and to enact a smart plan that can keep our economy stable during this transition. We believe carbon price will be important to do.
Thank you, low carbon energy. In your minds, imagine a world where coal, oil, and gas is more expensive, particularly coal because it's the most carbon dense of the fuels. Imagine what you think will happen to those black lines and the red line, etc. We're going to increase carbon price. We'll choose it much more specifically.
How much a ton?
We're going to make it go up to $40 a ton in this first move, which is much of Europe has a price of this. So imagine what you think it's going to do.
Wow.
Which line do you see moving the most? Temperature and coal. $40 a ton makes future investments in coal infrastructure unwise, and so we see a significant downturn in use of coal around the world. I'm going to make it exactly $40 a ton. Temperature is now down to 3.4 degrees with the carbon price.
All right, great, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
There's a question
Yes.
from one of the Justice Hawks. Yes.
Is that $40 a ton of carbon or per ton of CO2?
Per ton of CO2.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up, let's have an intervention from our Land, Agriculture, and Forestry Alliance. Thank you.
Got 60 seconds.
Our plan was to lower and eliminate coal in all agriculture and food production, but since we have reached that goal, we are now recommending deforestation to end deforestation and keep our forests standing.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
You can look over on the bottom right, you can see the future that we predict if we do nothing to deforestation. The emissions from deforestation are expected to go down. We've already dropped them a lot. They're expected to fall further because there aren't that many trees to convert into soy and into palm oil in Indonesia and Brazil, the place with these abundant forests. So it's already falling. In this scenario where we decrease deforestation, we imagine, watch the blue line, if we reduce it significantly, it drops almost to zero, and it shaves off another roughly 0.2, 0.1 degrees. It's not a silver bullet, it's another contributor to keep getting us well below 2 degrees. Thank you. We're at 3.3. We've made progress, we have much further to go.
All right, next up, let's have FFM, the fossil fuel multinational, who has showed up to this climate meeting. And remember too, everyone so far has proposed policies. There is also the ability to remove a policy if you disagree with it.
I represent the fossil fuel multinational, and we are devastated at the losses in our own company. However, we do see oil as the future, and we would like to increase that. Oh, gas. Decrease gas. Increase gas.
Yes, you want to increase gas.
We are
and
going
so
to
you
increase gas.
subsidize gas.
We are going to subsidize
You're going to
gas.
subsidize natural gas
Yes.
globally. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so what do you all think was going to happen?
It's going to go back.
We're going to see. We have some people who are not optimistic. All right, so Secretary General, add it to the plan, I suppose.
We're imagining a world where we're strongly subsidizing some of the zero carbon energy, and we have a very high carbon price, and at the same time now subsidizing natural gas. We'll see where the economics lands. Watch the blue line. Watch the blue line in the top left as we boost natural gas. So here we were at 3.3, and if we boost it up, it's adding about 0.1 degree back increase of temperature. The reason is the promise of natural gas would be if it replaces higher carbon density coal. But in this case, you've already killed the coal. This is just leading to more burning of fossil fuels, so the temperature has gone up to 3.3.
Okay, all right, last group to go. Justice Hawks, what do you think about this whole situation and what do you propose? Justice Hawks are huddling.
You've got 60 seconds before you must start.
So guys, next I'm going to lower my things. Okay?
All right, Justice Hawks, your time is ticking.
Require people to, it'll be less land, it'll be less use of.
Please, could everyone turn their attention to the Justice Hawks? You have 60 seconds. Go.
Okay, the Justice Hawks proposed in lieu of the multinationals advocating for an increase in fossil fuels. We do not believe that will get us to where we need to go, and therefore we need to have we need to increase the carbon price to reduce demand in all fossil fuels and keep those in the ground and increase renewables.
Great, thank you, Justice Hawks.
We allow an increase at this point up to $60 a ton. Imagine what you think it's going to do. Watch the blue, red, and brown lines in the top left, and they scoot down to 3.2.
Yeah, and we saw that boost in gas counteracted there. All right. Okay, at this point, we're at 3.2 degrees. You all have provided one intervention so far. Thank you for that. However, our plan is still inadequate. Clearly, we are not there yet. I'm interested to see what kinds of commitments we can get. I also want to give you all a chance to regroup, think about what has made a difference here. What haven't we heard? What are the interests in this room? Who has the ability to actually make this plan? I mean, when we look at it, do you all think this is possible? Do you all think the stakeholders in this room can mobilize a carbon price, scale up some sort of breakthrough in new technology, increase gas, as well as stop deforestation? If not, then we need to reassess, because this is not just about nice words right now. This is about you being able to go home and implement this.
You also can speak to one another, visit other parties, and perhaps there are ways that working together you can align goals. Right now, see, your zero carbon energy and your renewables are kind of playing off each other and not, you're spending a lot of money to not get the results you may need. So talk to each other. You have 5 minutes.
I just turned population.
Not to zero it out, just some sort of decrease, because it is a powerful part of the equation.
And what is that?
It'll be, what do you mean, what is
Is
that?
that contraception distributed? I mean, what is your policy?
Yeah.
Just contraception around the world?
Sex education, contraception, and I mean possibly, man, it would be really tough with the whole government implementation of the China one-child policy.
Right.
But I would like to think.
Right, so I've got that right here. All right, stop.
I wonder about carbon which is the biochar and some of the other, like Project Drawdown, take one of those, do some carbon technology of carbon just zero it.
Right. So, and just to say, and go back, we still have lowering methane is plant-based. We've got that. We've got the biochar. So right now you're saying that would increase tech, basically.
Well, for carbon renewable specifically, not technology or new technology, but like how do we get rid
From what I understand, carbon removal is actually like really efficient. Like the goal is first to not even have the carbon in the first place. That's like a
But
blast.
which thing here, or did you say, I'm sorry?
It's actually
It's over here under tax,
under
so increase tax.
I would like to,
Real quick, which tax code?
Take them on to carbon dioxide.
I'm sorry?
Slowing.
Slowing economic growth?
I mean,
Here's what we have so far.
Hey, Ellie.
yeah, are you wanting me to vote on one?
You can vote on one, or you can add another one.
I'd be interested to see what this technology carbon capture storage is unproven but it's technology.
Here, I mean, this is where they always talk about here. The thing about population, I would say, is also education and impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need the such as people being like, oh, I'm not going to do it.
but yeah,
You know, I guess cooking or eating less meat. You know, you're going to have to, you're going to convert everything.
Population is a very important solution when it comes to climate change.
Yeah.
But it also is the
Combination,
hardest
I've never seen
to have conversations about.
Exactly, but
Yeah, we haven't done
it's weird with it being this game because to me, like with methane, it's a little generic as far as like, okay, so
Ellie,
be vegetarian, like so you convert them.
somewhere with the model.
Yeah.
in terms of what is actually likely to happen, mass electrification of transport is highly likely based on projections by some really educated people that probably by 2030 we won't have any more ICE vehicles. They'll all be electric. Electrical vehicles, even if they're using coal-based electricity.
At this time right now,
Okay, so electrification of all transport with the possible exception of
Just to keep it consistent.
cheaper, fuel is save $25,000 a year per electric bus.
increasing new technology?
Maintenance is almost 20 moving parts compared to so it's the way of the future.
New tech again.
okay, so currently,
I thought it was technology. Okay,
I think everybody has.
Yes, sorry.
So currently, if we live under land use regulations, we're looking at Facilitation. Is we have our to step over its trip or an energy supply and either lower population, increase electrification, or lower economic growth. So currently, right now, we only have one of our advanced industry emissions. So I'm going to have to ask for a vote out to you all that we are going to next decide if we are going to one, lower methane and other gases, or two, increase technology.
I could argue that when you do the technological fix of biochar, you are lowering the methane.
Well, for the sake of this, it
So
does
you're
say
saying-
the specified.
Could all the delegates take
All
their
right,
seats, please?
everyone.
Okay, that's fine. I still think methane.
So lower methane, increase tech, or lower methane, increase tech?
Okay, everyone, Justice Hawk says you've vacated your spot. Could you refine your chairs? And we'll get back to the negotiations. Thank you all again. I really appreciate the commitment you brought to the first round of talks. We made some progress. I'm hopeful as to where we might go. Cream Estates. Thank you. Okay. And Cream Estates, why don't we take it off and you lead us into the second round.
How many rounds are there, Madam?
As many as it takes.
Thank you.
All right, Cream Estates, are you ready?
I have a question about process. If we want to propose removing something, can we say what we want to do instead?
You can remove something, and then you will have another turn eventually in which you can add something.
Do we have any control over the increments in which we remove something?
Sure.
Yeah.
You get to remove it as much as someone else moved it forward.
Okay.
You can just undo someone else's action.
Okay.
But we need you to do it now, so or you can pass. Do you want to act or pass?
We're gonna
Yeah.
Our country is reeling from the storms. We already have an enormous economic impact from that. So we, also our entire economy is based on coal. We can't quickly retool everyone. It's difficult to re-educate a workforce and shift to an entirely different energy infrastructure. So given that situation, we need more time to make that happen. So we would like to remove the carbon tax and put it back to where it was originally, which was $40.
All right.
So
why don't
watch it. Here we go. Watch.
So here's our carbon price, pulling it back to 40. All right, back to 3.3.
It's only 0.1 degree.
Next delegates, who's up?
Pandasia, what do you have for us?
And actually, let's have different representatives each time so we get more different people speak up. So nominate a different spokesperson. Sorry about that. Each time we're going to have different people speak.
If we're talking about technology.
We're not. We're talking about methane. Lowering methane is what's got the most votes.
Oh, it is.
All right, Pandasia, thank you.
I know you're passionate, but you literally have a very short sentence.
We would like to increase energy efficiency in transport by improving the rate of efficiency improvement by, if we can, 4 to 7 a year.
We'll see what we can give you. Okay, what we're doing, thank you. This is improving vehicles, the efficiency of vehicles. Think fewer SUVs, more Priuses. This is also bikeability, walkability, urban design. This is the availability of public transportation. This is all over the entire planet, not just in the developed countries. Here we are increasing it. If we change it up to increased, then it moves many things down. Watch the red line of oil shifts down somewhat, and we get to 3.3, actually 3.2 degrees, undoing that last action. Thank you very much. Next group.
All right, let's have low carbon energy.
Transportation is a big deal. In discussions with utilities, we've decided that cars should be electrified and that the utilities will provide it. In exchange, they're going to promote carbon capture and removal. So we want to
Okay, we'll start with the electrification of our transport system.
So we're going to do this two ways. First, we're going to do it on top of everything that's been happening. So imagine a world that we've have all these actions already. We're going to boost electrification. Watch what happens. What happens to temperature? Nothing. What happens? What are the lines that move over on the left? So new technology. We need more thorium fission. So we build more nuclear fusion to supply the electricity. The red line of oil shifts down minutely, and coal goes up a tiny bit. On this planet, when we need new sources of electricity, where do we get it? New technology and coal. It's somewhat more efficient to electrify a vehicle. You need less fuel. What we call the well-to-wheel efficiency is somewhat better. It's more efficient to burn these fossil fuels in a power plant or get some thorium fission in a power plant than in the front of your car. It's somewhat more efficient, but this is a world that still gets a lot of its energy from natural gas and from coal out in the future, so it does not significantly change the temperature. We also did a test where it'd be interesting, if this was the first thing that was suggested, in the same way, it would increase coal and somewhat decrease oil, but like other analysis is showing right now, it does not significantly reduce long-term temperature.
All right, next, let's hear it for our Land Agriculture Forestry Alliance.
So the three of us here.
Could you all send up a spokesperson, please?
We're just trying to figure out who that is now that we know we have to switch. We're on methane, I think, right?
I was thinking
You were technology.
She was technology, I was methane.
You were methane. So of you guys,
Go
who
ahead.
wants to go? Yep.
Closest.
Do you want to wait then, Scott?
Yeah.
Jump up there.
Methane?
Yep.
All right, let's give it a round for the Lang 4 Alliance.
Yeah.
We'd like to reduce methane and other gases.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well said.
Let's get this thing going.
All right, with that a change, let's see where we land.
Yeah.
Wow, you all see that?
Yes, yes.
So we were at 3.2 degrees, and with that adjustment to highly reduce our methane and other gases, we're down to 2.8. There is a lot in this sector. So in addition to the methane emissions, which come from where? Where do our methane emissions come from? Cows. Where else?
Rotting food.
Rotting
waste.
food, landfills. What else? Natural gas. Great. And then in addition to methane, in that slider that you just adjusted there is nitrous oxide. Big source from agriculture emissions, like our fertilizers. And then also a suite of other gases known as the F gases. So those show up in our air conditioning units and refrigerants and heavy industry. You're reducing those too. So there's a lot hidden in that slider. Let's keep it moving. Fossil fuel multinational, what do you have for us?
I will say, as a multinational corporation, it's really hard to plan when the policy is changing consistently. It's hard to figure out what our plan's going to be when the carbon price goes up and down all the time. But with that said, there still is a $40 per ton carbon tax in there, and we want that money reinvested into carbon removal technology, especially when things are being dug into the ground. We may or may not have an invested interest with things being under the ground. So please increase technological carbon removal.
Thank you. Right now, when we move this, we're going to be changing 5 different types of future possible imagined technology that does not currently exist. One of them is called bioenergy carbon capture and storage. You grow trees, you make fuel out of it, you capture liquefied carbon, you put it into the ground where we used to mine out natural gas. Direct air capture is like a dehumidifier. It pulls it out of the air, liquefies it, you shove it in the ground. Agricultural soil carbon. Don't till your soil. You keep more of the soil, more of the carbon dioxide stored in the soil. There's biochar, where you burn, you create this char that put it under the soil as well, and that stores it. And the 5th one is just good old afforestation. We're not having afforestation, so those 4 right there. Mineralization. There's certain rocks you can chop up, you can crush, lay them out, and they absorb carbon dioxide. So here we are, we're going to increase this, pull more CO2 out of the atmosphere, and it moves it down another 0.2 degrees. It is not a silver bullet. It is not an alternative to all the other things you're doing. It is instead is part of the silver buckshot. It's requiring right now those actions plus the peaking of oil that you've got out here in the 2030s, peaking of coal a little sooner. In this scenario, you still have natural gas because you subsidize it, and it's growing throughout the century. That's leading temperature to rise up to 2.6 degrees. Your goal again, 2.0 or well below. You're making a lot of good progress. Keep going.
And I'll note too that in addition to the progress that you're making, you're also relying on technologies that haven't yet been developed. So that's an important thing to note. Technological carbon removal, a lot of those technologies are very much in the laboratory stage and have not reached large scales. And we also have this new technology. you're betting the future on some technology that we don't have yet scaled. So just keep that in mind in terms of the resilience and the risks that you are accounting for here when we look at this scenario. I'm going to turn it over to the Justice Hawks. What do you all have for us?
Well, we keep returning again and again to coal, that until we address coal, we are not going to solve this problem, is our belief. So we'd like to see what would happen if we highly taxed coal.
Thank you. Right now, so look at the scenario you've got with the carbon price. It's peaking around 2030 and dropping slowly throughout the century. We're now going to tax it and see how much more they can get it to tip down by making it more expensive. I'm going to move it down here, and it adjusts it slightly. Already, coal is incredibly unfavorable for investment. You're making it a bit more unfavorable, and so temperature ease down maybe 0.5 of a degree. So, you've already killed coal. What's next?
All right, well, that concludes a second round, but let's just keep it rolling. I'm going to send it back over to the Cream Estates, and you give us your third policy. Take a second to regroup if you need to, but let's keep it moving.
Bringing gas on as a subsidy. Oh, thank you. Sorry. All right.
I just think both of those are great. I still feel like, it is obviously population is a big thing. I would like to see one of the two countries over there.
All right, Cream Estates are ready. Thank you all. We'll let them take it away.
So we at the Cream Estates are disappointed in how coal has been affected in the recent turn of things, but we are willing to contribute to the future, so we would like to propose increasing afforestation.
All right, afforestation, so that's planting lots of trees on a very large area of land.
Yeah.
So we
It's
saw
no silver bullet, it's another bit of silver buckshot.
2.6 down to 2.5. All right, Pandasia, do you have something for us?
Coming down. More population.
In Pandasia, we've decided it's in our best interest to increase the carbon price further.
All right, carbon price is going back up after it came down, back to $60 a ton. All right, there it is. So now we are at 2.4 degrees. So we are making progress here. This is good news. Low carbon energy, what do you have for us?
Well, we think it's just time to buckle down and make some sacrifices if we need to. So I think we need to increase the carbon price to 80.
Oh. Wow.
All right.
I didn't say anything about dividend. Yeah,
I just heard someone just mention about dividends. So there are many different ways to set up a carbon fee and dividend or a carbon price. And so just noting that one of the plans would be to have the money that's collected, all the government revenue, and already we have significant revenue. And go down to financial, go down to, is this where it is? Ellie, cost of subsidies.
You got it, you highlighted it.
There it is. Net revenue. So early on, $1 trillion, that's getting up to, by 2030, $2.3 trillion in overall revenue. That could be returned back to citizens, particularly the most vulnerable to the increase in energy costs. So if poor folks particularly get a check back every month, dividend of this, all the money that's collected. There are many other debates about we've heard the proposal from you all, of course, that you would get that money directly back to you. And of course, the governments have said, well, it should come back to close deficits. Those are the three main ways that you might handle the revenue. Yes?
What happens if you like have the 10-year phase in time? You
Like make it 5 years?
Yeah. Because a lot of that is up front anyways.
So that would be another thing we could try is, but did we increase it to 60? Was that, we already did it.
Yeah, let's leave that. If you all want to make that proposal to reduce that, that could be an option. But let's see what it does. We can see what it does.
Look over on the right, you see the little blue line going up, there's the 10 years. If it happens quicker, mind you, this is a model that's running over 80 years, it happens a little sooner, and it does not make a long-term change effect. Did we already increase it?
No.
We said, okay, it's going up to 80, so watch what will change here. Does this actually start to tip the red line of oil down? A little bit on gas, a little bit on coal, and we're at 2.3. But you are very close to the goal of 2 degrees.
We are getting there. Okay, thank you, low carbon energy. All right, let's hear it for line 4. Lag report.
We want to take some of these tax profits and put that into the economic growth of women and girls in agriculture as a solution, the Project Drawdown solution. Where's that? What's that? Help me.
Reducing population through education.
There's been a lot of research that shows that empowering women and girls around the world tends to reduce population growth rates. So that would be, you could imagine a scenario where that played out. Right now,
well, but women are one of the largest they're producers of agriculture around the world. And on that same plot of land, they're getting less investments, they're getting less support. So if we give them more support and more investments into these small plots of agricultural land around the world, and yes, population, but is there, without going out, and so is it education, increasing education, or is it increasing economic growth? Or do we have to go straight to the population one? The end.
Do you have an idea on this, Ellie?
I also see a comment from Pandasia.
I was just going to agree with her that empowering women, educating women in more countries that have women in like political positions, they pass more environmental treaties and environmental regulations.
Great.
So one way to look at it is that you could actually see enforcing the kind of proposals that you put forward if you empower women and girls in those settings and then they have more political leadership. You might actually get to implement all these ideas you've come up with. There are a couple though, like, so what we're talking about here, a couple things. Growing more trees, I think you were talking about like on agricultural land, so you're doing that. We could increase growing more trees, which is carbon removal. That would be another one. The agricultural soil carbon is another impact that you could have if you're talking about pulling more carbon out of the atmosphere. But the other one that, and the reason that Project Drawdown has women and girls as the most important or top 5 is because of this. This idea that if you empower women and girls around the world, they control their own fertility, we may not see this future for population, which is what the UN thinks is going to happen. The UN thinks we're here today at 7.7 billion. Here in 2019, 7.7 is where we are today. I had to give this speech a couple months ago and it was 7.6, 7.7 now, headed towards 11 or 12, which is the scenario we have here. If we imagine a lower scenario through empowering women and girls, then we're down here. Imagine this is somewhere between the low scenario and the higher scenario, the medium scenario. It would drop down here to below 10 billion. There's a lot of momentum in this system. There are a lot of young people who will be having children no matter what. That train has left the station. Here we are heading at a little bit below 10. Temperature is down to 2.2 degrees. It was 0.1 degree, 0.3. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet. Thank you. Next group.
All right, next we have FFM, Fossil Fuel Multinational. How are you feeling about this strategy we're pulling together? You all have a proposal for us? All right.
All of the above. All of the above.
Okay, you have the floor. Go
We're
ahead.
just in support of increasing energy efficiency for buildings and industry.
Great. Energy efficiency for buildings and industry.
Think of this as heating, ventilating, cooling, appliances, motors, houses, commercial establishments, industry. Improving that efficiency. Now the idea of it, of course, is that if you do it, you lose less energy. Watch the blue line of natural gas, the brown line, as we increase it significantly.
There we are. That's 2 degrees.
2 degrees. Give yourself a hand, you made 2.
All right. Well, I also want to give Justice Hawks another round, and then we can see where we are at that. See if Justice Hawks, you have something up your sleeve. What do you think it's going to take to push it a little further than that?
Could we add 60 seconds?
60 seconds. They are calling the people's movements all over the blue planet, talking to the youth movements in the halls of the Crema States, talking to many others.
We could still move from low growth carbon removal technologies and medium
I'm sorry, which one?
Technology.
All right. Thank you, Justice Hawks.
The Justice Hawks would like to propose focusing our efforts in technologies that we are certain to work and not hypothetical scenarios. So we are going to promote the reduction of investments and research into new technologies.
All right. So Justice Hawks are proposing to remove the new technology breakthrough that we had added at the very beginning.
The modelers who have created this model have never encountered this combination. It is going to be an interesting moment for us.
We don't know what's going to happen.
We would like you to mentally simulate now. What we've done is we've made a huge incentive to get away from carbon here with the carbon price that is very high relative to what it could have been, which has led us to peak coal, oil, and gas in the 2020s and 2030s. The low carbon energy choice right now is thorium fusion or something like that. Now we're going to remove that subsidy. What do you think is going to change the most? Which line is going to change the most? Renewables.
We hope so. Yeah.
So, watch the green line and the orange line in the top left.
Come on, green line.
All right. So now you all have a scenario in which you are not betting on some technology that doesn't yet exist and are instead relying on good old wind and solar to continue growing and becoming the dominant source of energy.
So, as I said, it's been a horrible, horrible week, and we're finally facing some truths about what we need to do to our global economy, our land use, our energy supply, the way we live, the way we treat our young people and our women and girls. The actions have spanned a large, large area. I appreciate your counsel, and I now turn us together to think, how can we actually implement such a plan? But for now, you've come here on very short notice. I want to give you a hand and give yourselves a hand, for you have achieved a scenario that seems to have a decent chance of limiting warming to 2 degrees. Give yourself a hand. So, what I want you to do is take your chairs and put them toward the outside of all these tables. Scoot the tables a little bit to the middle. Leave your teammates. Sit somewhere else. And we're going to make this a big kind of U around the outside. Scoot things in very quickly. Here we go.
Ready?
everyone, yeah, take a seat in your chair, in a chair.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Oh, we're supposed to.
it's fine to use spots.
Oh, well, I didn't.
No, you guys are, yeah, grab it. You guys are okay. Okay.
I'd like to, okay, so I'm going to just shake this off. Everyone just shake a little bit. You're not that old person anymore. You're who you are now. I'm Drew again. Ellie's Ellie again. We're not playing the game anymore. So, and I want to summarize and then have us consider this scenario before we start talking about what this means. And what you just did is created a scenario that had a wide range of actions that you took. Noticing taxing coal, subsidizing renewables. In this case, you helped gas along, even though that didn't help you very much. A relatively high carbon price, focusing on energy efficiency. That is some technologies that lowered the demand. The result, a lot with reducing deforestation, growing more trees, reducing food emissions, some technological carbon removal. Some of the result that you see is that we would be peaking coal first, 2025, gas a little bit later in the 2040s, oil here in 2030 would be peak oil with a growth of zero carbon renewable energy. Just for a moment, consider the possibility that this could happen. There's a lot in our culture that says there's no way this could happen. And most of the conversation around this issue is around that. So for just 60 seconds, we, these 35 people together, are going to just be silent and consider the possibility that we could prevent this problem into the future. Think about what you would love about that actually happening. We're going to be silent for 60 seconds. Okay. Turn to the person next to you or two people next to you. Tell them how you are feeling at this moment after this experience. This is not what you're thinking. This is, are you mad? Are you sad? Are you glad? Are you scared? Are you hopeful? Mad, sad, glad, scared. Turn to the person next to you. How are you feeling?
And? I'm scared. I still feel. Yeah. And
so much collaboration, but also like.
Yeah, I guess it does. At least with this projection, it still keeps it low. But to me, it's like that doesn't mean everything's gonna be perfect. It's not still gonna be the same, you know.
It's like even as like ugly, it's still working.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know? And he's talking about like what he would look forward to. Like I'm thinking just like safety and comfort for people, like no like climate migration, you know, just.
And like under this model, I like the fact that like you would be efficient first, so reducing like energy waste, and then you know reducing more But it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was the one like. Yeah.
Like, if this could happen, it would be such a gimme. I'm into this world or something, you know?
I feel like population is such a big one. I was shocked how little it moved it down. I was the one in my group to push for let's try population, but even then, like I know people who are concerned about the planet.
All right,
and they're
everyone.
still having like 3 kids, and I'm not going to tell them that's wrong, but.
Want to wrap up your conversation with the person
I feel
next to you? Okay, and I'm curious, just quick reflections that came up in the 60 seconds of silence, or in just this brief kind of checking in with your neighbor. How are people doing? I see some nods. Anyone want to share?
It made us hopeful, and the idea of less greed and competition and more global harmony is really nice.
Cool. All right, so we have some positive feels over here. Yeah.
We had some mixed feels. We talked about like, we're cool, like this world sounds good. It's one with more forests, more efficient buildings and all that. But like the thought of all the coordination and people coming together that would it require makes us nervous.
And it's still only at 2, you know.
Yeah,
that
right.
doesn't mean
That just means
everything's-
like we aren't all gonna die like all at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Other reflections?
I just think it's great to hear that it's doable.
Yeah. Totally. We made a scenario. It works. Anyone else have any other reflections?
But we're certainly curious about wanting to move around some more of your buttons.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if that's the case, we can turn over to there. But I did just want to open it up. You know, sometimes we just went through a lot, and of course we were playing it on the fictitious blue planet, but we live on our own blue planet of Earth, and this model was built for Earth, not for the blue planet. So all those different dynamics.
Let's get more time for anyone with feelings that they want to share. Yeah.
So I had a very cathartic, relaxing, like hopeful piece, especially when you consider we just did this with a subsidy on natural gas. Like, we just did this with a subsidy on natural gas. It's retarded.
It's true.
Yeah.
I actually get quite angry because if we do have solutions, it is a minority, probably a small minority of the population, which prevents it for their own self-interest. And tackling that is proving to be incredibly, incredibly difficult. And unfortunately, it may take a massive emergency, as you concocted, to force change.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if there was all peace and harmony. We could probably solve the problems in here if we, could, be puppets and control everything. But so that aggravates me that we're
Anger.
facing
Thank
that
you.
challenge and can't change the direction.
Yeah. I saw some other insights, some hands dropping up. Yeah.
Kind of along a similar line, I feel slightly despondent. I see that like we're in trouble. You're showing coal use peaking in 6 years and then dropping off. And there's a lot of things like, there's like a subsidy for gas and large investments in renewables and this massive carbon tax and all these things. Planting trees and decreasing deforestation and increasing energy efficiency, and like where's all the money for that going to come from? And even at our table with our discussion of like trying to play the devil's advocate for groups whose interests lie with fossil fuels, we weren't doing that efficiently. We weren't doing that in a way that it was done in like a summit setting. This was done kind of like as a group, like let's get down to number 2, but really like it felt like if we were all being honest to what was on the paper, like for us and our group, and I don't know, I'm guessing with some of the other groups, just from the knowledge that I have of what their interests are, we wouldn't have got there. We wouldn't have got there in a day or 2 days or 3 days probably, definitely not in an hour.
I mean, I see it as like I can see how coming together at a table with leaders around the world, as much as I think we're looking at a very politically divisive world, especially here in the United States, but I also see it as a unifying factor when you bring leaders together. They do start to talk to each other and start to inspire each other. And I think it can gain momentum, some positive vibes. I'm hopeful that it could be a bridge, not a wedge issue.
Thank you.
One more right here.
I'm also curious. I'm curious as to, you know, what would happen if we had done things in a different order. Would we have gotten to a different result? And I'm curious whether what it would take to get to 1.5.
Well, that's enough of a practical question, and maybe this is the next place to go. So we talked about a little bit how you're feeling as human beings who are in the middle of this. Let's just put that aside for a second. And there were a lot of things that we asserted up here based on our research and this modeling that you just had to kind of accept. Wait, what? Electric cars? I thought that was going to save everything. And so I want to let's just now talk about some of the things that you saw that may have been different from what you really expected, and things like, wait, what about 1.5? And we only got 2 degrees. That's kind of disappointing that we weren't able to, we did all of these things and we didn't meet this goal that 1.5 to stay alive is what all the young people were chanting at Katowice when I was there a couple months ago at the UN negotiations. It's a big goal that we do have. So basically, let's push it. So call out, what would it take to get to 1.5? And there was a report, by the way, that we contributed 3 scenarios to that had dozens of models that answered exactly this question. And it's pretty consistent with what we're about to show you. So call out, what do you think it would take?
Maximize biochar.
So more technological carbon removal could ease us down another 0.1.
Get rid of methane altogether.
Yeah, so it's got to be methane, coal, oil, and gas. That's where the sources of this are. So we can reduce this, but it's not even methane, can't do that much more. It's basically, we're burning gas throughout, we can't burn fossil fuels. We need to totally eliminate them. It is a pollution that is killing us. So it's that. There it is. So what do? You, first of all, get rid of the subsidy, and then you start to tax it. And that's probably going to happen via fracking regulation, et cetera. And you start to tax oil, or you boost up this carbon price to some of these. What are we at now? $123 a ton? You've heard incredibly high levels. You can do other things like, push coal down some more. We can go and make it retire even faster. So less coal, right here. Coal plant accelerated retirement. Asheville was successful a couple years ago shutting down its coal-fired power plant around here. And so there you are. What does it take? Peaking coal, oil, and gas within the next 5 or 10 years and dropping them suddenly over time. And then where do we get our energy? We get it from our use of renewables. And it's important, we haven't shown it that much, but what does energy use do globally? What do you guess? What is it going to show? It's going to go way down, right? We're just going to not use all this energy. We have to reduce our demand for it. And so that's going to take lifestyle changes. That's going to take policy changes to encourage much more efficient use.
Yeah,
so
and I'll also add too that it's really important as we think about something like a very high carbon price and taxes on fossil fuels and things like lowered energy demand. Play that out in your head too and think about how that looks. For some people, if the policies are not designed in a very thoughtful and deliberate way that is keeping in mind the fact that high energy prices really hurt poor people, those policies, if designed without that kind of careful lens towards people's needs, can do harm as well. So, the model simplifies a lot, and the way these policies are discussed has to be done with nuance and has to hold the fact that there are lots of competing needs competing human needs in this equation that are unable to be ignored.
And in the same way, there's huge potential for co-benefits in the near term, particularly to our most vulnerable people. Imagine a world where coal dropped that much that fast. I just saw a statistic today that coal has been reducing the average lifetime of a European 2 years. Anyone see this come across their news today? It's taking 2 years off the average European. Now you imagine a poor person in Detroit who's breathing a lot of that coal, and it's even more. So this is a world that's much healthier. This is a world with lower health costs and many other benefits because we can appreciate what happens in the near term because of many of these policies. There were many hands that went up, so I want to answer more questions. Yes?
Well, it's politics too. You know, people have to own we have to own our power and not allow these oil companies to own our politicians and keep these old policies in place until we do something about that. It's not going to change, right? I mean,
This is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest challenges. How to stand up to the power from that corner, the FFM company, and then also the power here in the United States, which is so beholden to the coal, oil, and gas interests. Yes?
I'm wondering about, in particular, the slider population, deforestation, and afforestation. Those seem to me to put a great onus on this change on developing countries.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that, first of all, seems logical and based on what your model is assuming. And are those 3 sliders, I'm interested to see what happens if those sliders aren't so extreme, whereas some of the others that affect developed countries more, shifting the onus on developing and developed countries.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to note. That's right, because when we think of the forests of the world, where are they? Brazil, Indonesia. That's where there is huge amounts of deforestation. So stopping that deforestation requires action in those places. And in addition to that, afforestation, when we talk about planting trees, we're not talking about the potential to plant massive forests across Europe isn't there because it's way too densely developed. Same thing with some sections of the United States. We have and this afforestation lever is challenging. The scale at which we're talking about planting trees is huge. And again, this is one of these kind of things that is loaded. We can't just say, oh, we're gonna plant trees. There have been massive tree planting programs before and they've flopped. They can sometimes be planting monocultures. So we need to make sure if we're planting trees that it's done in such a way that is in tune with the ecology and the local ecosystem. And so with that, again, it goes back to the details of how these policies are actually implemented. But it's a good point. What if we back them out? Let's test that and see we're at 1.5 right now. If we back out and we say, okay, we're not doing so much tree planting, there's still some deforestation out there. So that was 1/10 of a degree right there. And then the other one was population here.
I'm sorry.
So, and then how much was that population?
Do you all remember? What do you think it is?
It was
How much do you remember? How much it gained us?
It was 1/10 of a degree, I think.
no, it's
1/10 of a degree. We were at 1.5, and now we're at 1.6.
What about economic growth? What happens with that?
Again, slower economic growth. This is GDP per capita rising at 1.7% a year instead of 2.7. So much slower growth is another part of silver buckshot. It is not going to solve the problem entirely if you just slow it down. But it's important, what you're talking about, it's a very hot button issue, particularly with population. You notice how we say empower women and girls, because 20 years ago there was a huge movement of Western NGOs going over and saying the problem, and these are a bunch of tall white guys like me going and talking to largely brown-skinned people who are poor saying, you need to stop having more baby. And like, this is not how the transformation is going to happen. It's a very sensitive issue that we need to handle really carefully.
Education is big too.
The other I'm curious about is there's a lot of argument or conversation about nuclear energy and its role in transformation. So I'm curious about what you've learned about, adjustments to how we use nuclear.
Yeah. We need a long-term supply of energy. Like, you'll notice, like, we don't need renewable energy. We don't need wind and solar. We need, for climate, to stop burning coal, oil, and gas. So things that keep coal, oil, and gas safely in the ground help us. A solar panel doesn't help directly at a global scale anything unless it succeeds at displacing coal, oil, and gas. So it could be renewables that are here. It also, and personally I'm not a big fan of this, but it could be there's nuclear. And some people have the vision that that's how we do it. Or this new nuclear, some zero carbon thorium fission. They can compete, they could all be together, they have different costs. Lithium-ion batteries are not without cost, and photovoltaics, you still have to manufacture them. There are a lot of nasty chemicals, not as nasty as radioactive uranium or thorium, but so they tend to play off each other.
So all those levers, you mentioned some levers that had even more technology assumptions, where we just don't know about the technologies. I would imagine even in your wind and solar, you're assuming cost drops that are continuing with technological developments.
That's right.
Where we right now are pretending we can pick a scenario and that your cost scenarios are right, as opposed to saying we need to spread our risk across like 3 or 4 energy technologies and figure out which ones we actually can achieve those cost drops that you have in your model.
Well said. So we want to shift just a little bit. There was a discussion earlier about how we could actually do this and whether it could be possible to make this happen. And I'd like you all to consider whether we could actually see a scenario like we just talked about, where there was a climate emergency summit and we took action. This, I think, is really relevant to what we could be in the middle of today in the world. This is a graph that goes from 1800 all the way just to 2015, so it stops a few years ago. And each little notch here is a state adopting a new law that eventually became a national amendment to the Constitution. So way back here, Loving versus Virginia, interracial marriage, only a few states had it. There were people fighting for interracial marriage in 1780 who for the next 60 years, they and their children and their proteges fought without any success for 60 years. They got a few more, 1870s up to 1900, they kept at it, and then this exponential growth of finally the world coming to believe that this made sense, and Loving versus Virginia, 1967, boom, it's a national amendment. Same, this is here with prohibition, boom, here is the women's right to vote. These folks, this is another, what is it, another 10 years of trying to say that women should be able to vote, takes over, and then in 1920, the 19th Amendment. Here's Roe v. Wade in 1973. Here is same-sex marriage. We saw this, and this got to 36 states at the time of the graph. Here is recreational marijuana, which is about to just take that same kind of leap. The thing I want you to see is the shape. It looks like nothing is happening until everything is happening. It looks like nothing is happening until everything is happening. I'd like you to consider the possibility that in this movement, we are right there.